Forgot the passport photos. The Helmsman's course is on here. Do you know where that is?
I do, yeah. You can park anywhere in here. I don't. If they said whether you're meeting at the boat or at the centre.
Oh, the centre.
Drive up to the top of there, which is on the left-hand side.
Okay, thank you.
That's all right.
Yes, I can turn back and get them.
Well done. Debdale Wharf. And here's the team off to the boat. There it is, look. It's a blue one.
And we keep it just looped up so that we're not, so there's no chance of it falling in the water and trailing in the water. In this one we have our gas bottles, and it is signed with the gas isolation valve there. In the front there we also have an anchor. An anchor, you would only ever need an anchor if you were going on a tidal, on a river. Don't need anchor at all on a canal. With I've got an anchor on mine, and it's kept in a false compartment at the bottom of one of the wardrobes, so it's a half-hour job to get it out. But you don't go round the corner and think, oh shit, there's a river. You get into a river, so you stop the night before and get it all ready and get the anchor all ready if you're going to need it. We've just got a couple of storage lockers underneath these end of here, and our water tank at the front. But again, when you're in charge of the boat, you're in charge of anybody who's coming on board. So point out any danger spots, like this flue coming up here. A nice flue coming out the top of the stove, you know, to put your hand on to steady yourself when you come in, but of course that'll be red hot when it gets when you get your wood burner going. So we have fire extinguishers on this boat. I think we've got 4 on this boat, which is probably a bit over the top, but you always need at least 3. One at the front, one midships, and one at the back. Fire alarm, smoke alarm, and hanging above the cooker, CO2 alarm as well. Carbon monoxide.
This one here?
Yeah. Carbon monoxide alarms are a requirement for the boat safety now. All boats should have a carbon monoxide alarm. Nice little rule of thumb to get into the routine of doing: first of the month, check your alarm batteries. Carbon monoxide is the silent killer. You can't see it, you can't smell it. While we're going along, teas and coffees, folks, everything are here. The automatic ignition on the stove doesn't work, so we've got a little lighter there. Bottom drawer full of crisps, and then there is a chilled water dispenser over there. Cool. First aid is in cupboard there if we need it. Anything else that you can't see, just ask me about it.
So how long is this one?
45.
It's a 45 cramped though, like there's long, regular and...
Yeah, it's a 45-foot boat, yeah. So,
Okay.
you know, I mean, you can get up to 72 foot is the biggest you can get. I wouldn't recommend if you were hiring a boat that you go straight out and take a 72 foot.
No.
Sort of around 50, 55 foot is a nice size. 57 foot, 58 foot is known as a go anywhere boat because it will fit through every lock in Great Britain. I've got a 60 foot and there's 6 locks that I can't fit in. So, you know, I wouldn't be able to go over the Pennines. So, you know, it is that crucial on that. But
I haven't seen a bed yet.
no, there isn't a bed in this one.
Oh, there's not a bed.
All you do on this loo, there's a little lever there that opens a flap in the bottom of the loo. So you don't open that, whatever, shut that, and you've got a little button there which just gives a rinse of the loo bowl out, and that's it. So
And what kind did you say this was?
that's a cassette loo.
Cassette,
so there's a
right.
cassette that pulls out of that. So
Sure.
life jackets that will get sorted out here. Again, more fire extinguishers. We have a life ring there. I prefer a throwing line, which is just a soft bag with a floating line in it, or a soft horseshoe.
It's pretty solid, isn't it?
Yeah, throw that at somebody in the water. If they're not unconscious when they went in,
They
and you
will
crack
be.
them with that, they will be when you hit them with that. So, in a canal, 2-3 foot deep, that's it. So if you fall in the canal, shut your mouth, stand up, you know, and that's it. If they are in a state where they're unconscious, that isn't going to help them. You need to get somebody in the water to help them, you know, but what they will need is some help getting out of the boat, out of the water.
That's hard.
Now this is one of the areas, a lot of the time when people fall in off the boat or off the lock, they'll tend to catch their shoulder or hit their shoulder or something like that, and can result in collarbone fracture or a shoulder fracture or something like that. You've got problems then, you can't get your hands under their arms to lift them out of the water, too painful for them. And you will find that people fall in the canal and they're standing there and I've hurt my shoulder, I now can't get out of the water, you know. So that is why you'll see a lot of the boats have a short ladder on the top and have something like that just stored in your cupboard.
Yeah.
Oh, I like that.
You know, which you can just tie to the side of the boat, drop it over. It gives people a foothold, doesn't it? You know, so that they can so they can climb up and help themselves onto the boat.
Is that to pull yourself out of the hole, or is that to open the...
It's mainly I think it's mainly there to stop people catching themselves on those switches.
Right.
The height of them inside will vary an awful lot,
Oh,
you know.
I'm used
really
to crouching.
Yeah, it varies an awful lot.
I have had experience on a boat. I remember throwing up on one violently.
Okay.
But it was only a tinny.
This boat that we've got here is what's called a cruiser stern. So we've got a bigger area on the back. It's developed from the cruiser type boats. There's a trad stern which looks a bit like Danny Boy, where you just stand on the back. Danny Boy is actually called a semi-trad, where you can take that bit of canvas off the back and you've probably got a couple of seats inside that bit there as well. So they're the 3 styles of boats you get, and it depends what you've got as to how it suits your lifestyle, you know. Engine wise, this is a Barrowshire engine, which we've got on the boat. It's always normal for a little bit of water to be in the boats. There's not many boats that you'll find have a completely dry sump on them. This has probably got a bit more than it should due to wet weather and overworking and all that sort of thing. There is a tray underneath the engine which is enclosed separate to the rest of your bilge. I like to keep that on my boat as dry as I possibly can do. We've got a little bit of a problem on this with water coming in through the prop shaft when we're going, and it sprays it into there, so which we're taking her out the water and try and solve that problem this year. But when it's your own boat, I keep that area underneath the engine completely dry and clean. And you can, from the chandlers, you can get oil pads, which soap pads, which are white felt type pads put underneath. From the chandlers, they're about £5 each.
Right, yeah.
Go to Sainsbury's and buy a pack of puppy training pads. They're about £4 for 20.
Yeah.
So they do exactly the same job. And I just put those underneath the engine, and then when I come to check my engine, I literally lift it. If that pad is completely white still, I haven't. There's been no oil leak. There's no water leak. There's no nothing. You know, I can visually look at it and oh yeah, everything's fine. How often you get to check your oil is you'll get used to it on your own boat. With somebody like you on a hire boat, they will probably tell you to check your oil every day and they'll show you how to do it. They're just being ultra cautious. It's such a pig to check the oil on this one is. And
Oh wow.
the problem is most engines are derived from car engines, and they're Marinized versions, and you can, you know, and to see where we're actually having a word with Barrowshire, see if they can do a modification on this to put us a longer dipstick tube on and a longer dipstick so that we can get to it. Yeah, so oil we're right, that's where we fill the oil if we need it. Our coolant on this, the expansion tank, is in that cupboard where I got the little ladder out from, so we just check the coolant in there. In here, this is our engine, this is our stern gland greaser here. It's a piston that is that we fill full of grease, and so as we turn it down, it pushes grease down this little copper pipe here into the chamber round the shaft and fills the shaft full of grease. It's no good doing it first thing in the morning, because what's going to happen is as soon as the shaft starts spinning, it gets hot, grease disperses and it'll start to drip. Always do it at the end of the night, just quarter of a turn, half a turn. You'll just get used to it how you're doing it again. Underneath that is the bilge pump, which is automatic or manual. It's switched to automatic at the moment, switched on manual, it'll come down. The other terrifying area of the boat is our weed hatch. If we do get weeds, anything caught round the propeller,
I think so.
Yeah.
anybody know what I would do before I looked at this weed hatch?
Turn your engine off.
And put the ignition keys in my pocket. If I'm down here, take those ignition keys out and you keep them if you're going down the weed hatch. If you're clearing the weed hatch and you say, oh, I think it's cleared now, and your really helpful mate says, oh right, okay, and turns the propeller, turns it on while you've got your hands down there. Always always make sure 100% that nobody can start that boat while you're down here. So there, I can get my hand down round the propeller and check what's in it. When it's my own boat, I would have a selection of tools for clearing anything around that prop. I've got bolt crops, I've got secateurs, very sharp serrated bread knives, that sort of thing. I also have a pair of long-armed pond gloves, the very heavy-duty gloves, because if you've got fishing line around your propeller, 9 times out of 10 you're going to have a fishing hook on the end of it. So you know, even a tiny little fishing hook hurts when it gets in your hand. Pull it out.
Is it all right for that amount of water to be in it?
Yeah, that's fine. That's canal level.
Right. Okay. So the weed hatch is at the canal level. Yeah.
Never ever start it with this hatch off. You'll get a fountain of water up here that fills up the boat, so you never ever start it with that off. If you think you've cleared it, always make sure you put that back in. If it's in the winter, Alex, and say you're out in the winter and it's a nice frosty day and you've got something around your weed hatch and you need to stop, just boil yourself a kettle of water and pour it into the weed hatch. You've got a nice warm area to work then, rather than freezing cold. So that goes back on, and that's just a big clamp hand tight, as tight, you know, as tight as you can get it with your hand, and that seals everything back up in there. This time of the year, you will quite often, and you see it on social media groups all the time, people saying, going along in my boat today and it just got slower and slower and slower, and I thought there was something wrong with the gearbox, so I pulled into the side, stopped, couldn't find anything, started, and it was fine. And then it did it again, and then it did it again. It always happens for about 6-8 weeks this time of the year, and it is weeds getting around your propeller and sticking on your propeller. It makes your propeller sort of rugby ball shape, and so it doesn't you know. And then so if you're going along and you feel it like that, into neutral, quick burst to reverse, and you'll see all the weeds, all the leaves come off the prop. There we have our stern rope, tying this on at the back at the moment. Controls for the boat. Our tiller, which we tend to take off when we leave the boat. Nice bit of brass, which is a little bit too... Some of them you'll find that your tiller pin will only go in one way.
Yeah, mine does.
Yeah. So this is our tiller, or our steering. When you've got other people on the boat with you, try not to have them at the back corners here, because if you need to make a sudden movement, whoop, over they go over the back. So again, on a hire boat you will often find there is an arc painted on the floor where you keep out of when of your tiller arc. When they teach you how you stand with a tiller, what they will do is they will say stand right in the middle of the boat, so like that, tiller behind your back, and use your hand behind your back. It's the most accurate way of steering a boat. It's also the most uncomfortable way of steering a boat. So it's up to you. You know, a lot of people just stand slightly to one side of it, and this sort of thing. If I'm coming up to somewhere to negotiate to get into a tight lock or into a tight mooring, or you know, under a bridge or something like that, you will still see me move to the centre like that and do it like that, because it gives you a perfect lined up view. So I do still use that way, but then when I'm going down the canal and you know, middle of nowhere can see, I'm here, you know, with my cup of tea and that sort of thing, you know. So it's just being sensible about it, whereabouts you stand. You know, if you're doing negotiation, you're doing some manoeuvring or anything, I would sort of stand forward of this and just make sure nobody's in the back there, because if you suddenly need to move it over, you don't want to be pushing them over. Throttle, neutral at the top. As it goes forward, you'll hear or feel a click and you hear the engine change. That is idle ahead, neutral ahead. So it's now in gear, but the engine is still in neutral and ticking along. Open it up a little bit more, then it starts to speed up. Exactly the same in reverse. Try to avoid one straight in there. Try and do it. Pause at the top and then carrying on, just to be nice to the gearbox. The only other controls we have there are a horn and our tunnel light. So that's the controls. How do we do it on this one? I think that's it.
You pull it out.
Pull it out on this one. So that I can rev it as much as I like while it's in neutral. It's not in gear.
Gotcha, right, that's what it's for,
So that's what it's for. So that they're all slightly different. Right at the front, we've got our one front centre line, which is sitting around the little post. The little post is something that I put on the boat, because on my boat, which is the one up there, I've got a TV aerial on the front, and I tie a little ribbon to it, simply because it gives you a direction, it helps you with your wind direction. It goes back to my sailing days when I was on a sailing boat, and you always had a telltale that, you know, bear in mind, if you're, you know, if you're on a 60-foot boat and you're going down a canal that's nicely sheltered with a hedge both sides, and then there's an open gateway, you can have the wind howling through that gateway. Now, when you see that go straight out to the side, you know that wind's coming before you get there. You can, you know, so what I'm saying is sometimes the wind will be affecting the front of the boat when you've got no wind at the back of the boat. So that gives you some sort of idea what it's doing. It's also good to line things up with and that sort of thing. To the left of it, we've got our tunnel light. The tunnel light should be pointing slightly to the right and slightly up. So when we're in a tunnel, it's not dazzling other people that are coming through the tunnel. It's sort of more up to there to what we're doing. We then have our pole on the middle, which if ever you do get an engine problem or you need to manhandle the boat, you've got a pole that you can push the front of the boat around with. Whenever you're pushing with a pole, always have it over your shoulder or under your shoulder rather than that. Never put it into your shoulder and try and push that. If by any chance that did suddenly break, you could have a bloody great javelin coming at you, so just be careful with them. Plank in the middle, mainly used for river moorings when you're onto a river and you've got to, so you can't get quite tight into the bank. And then there is a boat hook to the left. As I say, this thing about don't use the gunnels are there to be used. That's what they're there for. Most of them have a non-slip surface on them and that sort of thing. It is mainly our training courses we try not to use them, and it's mainly insurance purposes. Our centre lines go to the D-ring in the middle, and that on this boat, that is virtually the pivot point at the same time. Fenders, the little rubber things that hang down the side of the boat. Mostly you should have your fenders up on a narrowboat when moving. You only would put them down for mooring. If you've got them down and you're on a single lock, it can make the boat too fat to get in and you will catch them. If you're going through a tunnel and you clip the rubbing strake or clip the wall, it'll pull them off. So you do see people cruising with their fenders down all the time, but technically in a perfect world they should be up when we're cruising. You said about a bed earlier, Greg, not that
Yes.
you were looking for a bed, but this is basically, it was a little two-berth. Under this big blue thing there is a bed that pulls out.
All right.
We put the big blue box over the top of it because this boat has been built as a training boat.
Sure.
There's one or two little bits on it. We have to have extra safety wise. We have to have a remote fuel cut off so we can stop the engine without going down the engine bay and that sort of thing. Things that you wouldn't have on a normal boat, but we have to have being it's a training boat.